So please welcome Gary Hall from Cisco Systems.
All right, let's turn this thing on. Aloha. Good morning. Let's try that again. You guys are part of a revolution. Let's hear it. Aloha. There we go. There we go. Okay, so who in the room has heard of the Internet of Everything? Okay, a few. Anyone heard of the Internet of Things? Can anyone tell me what the difference is? Okay, good. Then I've got something to talk about. All right. So, yeah, you've heard what I've done, what I do, all of that great stuff. So let's start with just a little bit of level setting around the expectations of the millennial generation. These are folks from the age of 14 to 29. We asked them to imagine a world without certain things. Let's see what they said. I couldn't imagine a world without a mobile phone, 97%. I couldn't imagine a world without the internet, 84%. Are we starting to understand that these folks are digital natives and that they're perpetually connected to the technology around them and that they cannot live without it? It is like water to them. A car, 64%. Back in my day, having a car was your ticket to freedom, but now, for the millennial generation, having a car is not necessary because there's an app for ride sharing. You can get someone to come pick you up, give them a couple of bucks, and they'll take you where you want to go. Your phone is more important. Your connections are more important. That is your ticket to freedom. My current partner, 43%. While connections are important, personal relationships seem to be taking a little bit of a hit here, right? But keep in mind, 14-year-olds don't necessarily know who they want to be with for the rest of their life, so we'll give them a pass on that. But really interesting to see that only 3% of people in this generation can live without their mobile device. But today, only 1% of the world's things are connected. 1%. So what happens when we go from these connected devices that we have today, our phones, our laptops, our workstations, to a world where everything is connected? What happens then? What happens when you connect factory floors? What happens when you bring onto the IP network all of these other devices and sensors, things like I have here, RFID tags. People have heard of Nest and the way that we're changing the way that we interact with our physical environment. Our connected homes, our automobiles, all of our technologies are now becoming connected to IP networks, which is creating another order of magnitude of those connections that people value so much. So to get started, I'm going to run a short video, just kind of level set, because I could talk to this for about 90 minutes, but in this video, you'll get a perspective in about 90 seconds. Over the next 10 years in value at stake. That is just the private sector. Another $4.6 trillion in value at stake for global public sector. That's a lot of value that's being put out there into the world today. This is about efficiency. This is about productivity. This is about improving the connections between your technologies and how they benefit your organization and drive to your business needs. Technology for technology's sake is not very compelling. Technology needs to support the business objectives of your organization. That's what we're talking about. So that's kind of neat, right? So what this is telling you is that things are changing. We've reached that knee of the curve of technology innovation that is taking us and accelerating exponentially. What used to take years and years and years in development is taking months. The application economy is creating new value every single day. But how do we keep track of all that stuff? How do we engage with the technology in a way that's meaningful, drives our business, and doesn't bury us in data? How do we transform data into knowledge and knowledge into wisdom? There's a lot of things that are coming together to make all of this happen. We're seeing standardization on the internet protocol. We're migrating to IPv6, which is creating a whole new amount of addressable space that allows all these devices to be connected. We're seeing cloud computing becoming mainstream. You don't have to look any further than the table tents on your tables in front of you to know that the cloud revolution is here. It's mainstream. It's something that's happening. If you're not a part of it, if you haven't talked to the folks at Hawaiian Telcom about their cloud offerings, I think it's about time you start looking at how you're going to migrate some of your workloads into the cloud and make room for all of these new devices, all of these new applications, all of these new technologies that are going to drive your business. We're seeing the analytics pushed out to the edge and then connected back to the cloud. What does that mean? Right? We're talking about distributed edge computing. Just when you got used to the concept of the cloud, along comes the fog. What's the fog? Fog is distributed computing at the edge, and the fog is connecting back to the cloud. So what does that do? If you've seen Minority Report, you've seen those kind of futuristic visions of the future where you're looking at how all of these technologies in real time are providing you with targeted advertising, are providing you with real-time intelligence, are providing you with the information that you need to be successful, or that you need to find the right product for you as a consumer. All of that analytics is happening at the edge. So this is kind of like if you look back to the mainframe computing era, you say, okay, mainframe computing, very similar to the way that we do cloud computing today, right? Where it's centralized locations, you're sharing workloads, you've got a lot of stuff together. And then along came the PC and disrupted the cloud, or disrupted the mainframe computing, right? And pushed it all out to the edge where the users were keeping their own data native and that kind of thing. Well, it's a little bit different this time. Because the main difference is that the cloud and the fog are working together. They're not disrupting each other, they're mutually reinforcing each other. We're also seeing things like consumerization of interesting technologies, and we're making it affordable. The network capacity is there now. So these devices, if you're going to connect these things in your workspace, in your home, in your automobile, you need the bandwidth to be able to do that. But the bandwidth is affordable now. It's mainstream now. You've got it all over the island. So things like this, an RFID access control. Things like this, solar panels. What happens when we connect a solar panel to a sensor? Now we've got a self-powering device that's on the Wi-Fi network. Does all sorts of interesting things. We'll talk a little bit more about that kind of stuff later. And we're seeing nanotechnology come into play here in a big way, right? The miniaturization of technology is providing us with the ability to put sensors inside of little tiny payloads that can actually be ingested into the human body and send your physician information about what's going on, right? Sounds a little crazy, but it's here today. It's happening right now. So let's talk about how we got to right now. How do we get to this point in our history in the evolution of the internet? So we started out when DARPA and Al Gore created the internet. What they did was they created connectivity for the Department of Defense originally, and then they extended that out to research institutions and universities. Going a little bit further beyond that, we saw the Amazon and the eBay effect, right? We saw this medium being used to transform commerce and to create what we know as e-commerce today. We started to see digital supply chains emerge where you could track items and packages and resources all the way from their origination to their destination. Then we went to immersive experiences. This is kind of where we've been living for the last few years with telepresence and collaboration and integrated telephony, right? You're seeing all of these integrated devices where you can communicate and collaborate. You saw the emergence of the cloud giving you an alternative to spending all this money on your IT assets and moving that out to a managed provider like Hawaiian Telcom, right? You have that ability to take all of these resources and communicate in a different way, to impact your business in a different way, to impact your relationships in new ways. For me, when I'm traveling to do something like this and my kids are back home, about 3-4 years ago, I'd call them on the phone, and that call would last about 30 seconds. Because kids say, hey, yeah, great, nice to hear from you. School is fine, okay, bye, right? I can't get them off video. When I put a video call through the kids, they're bringing up artwork, they're showing me their homework. They are immersed in the technology and they're creating new value that way. And it's a great way to connect when you're traveling, right? But look at that from a business perspective. What happens when you're leveraging these technologies in your business? It creates a new experience. We talked earlier about how do we do some follow-up after this conference, and how do we talk about some of these ideas and themes. We're going to do that over telepresence. I'll be back in Washington in the cold, in the snow, and we'll be talking here in real time. Amazing, amazing value that's created. But what happens next? As we digitize the world, we bring together all of these things. We bring together people, process, things, and data to create a whole new order of magnitude. Our CEO, John Chambers, CEO of Cisco, has said that over the next 10 years, the Internet of Everything will be more transformational than the entire history of the Internet to date over the next 10 years. You won't be able to recognize the world as it was, but we'll talk about that too. Sounds a little scary, right? Because change is always a little frightening. But there's no need to be afraid of the technology if you know how to harness it, if you know how to use it to drive your business forward, to improve your connections, to improve the world around you. So let's talk about, where do you fit in all of this stuff, right? There's all of these technology transitions. It's hard to keep up with them. I'm exposing you to a whole new set of technologies that are about to change the way you do business, about to change the way that you engage with your personal life and your homes and your automobiles and all of that kind of stuff. That's a lot to take in. It's hard to imagine how to even get started in leveraging these technologies because they're moving so quickly. But on the other side of the equation is you have business needs for your organization. And these technologies can be great enablers if they're leveraged properly, but if they're not, they can be a huge distraction and a huge waste of money. So you need to think, how do I leverage the technologies in a way that's going to specifically drive to our business outcomes that are desired? Right? How are we going to use these things to our advantage? How are we going to use it to improve the experience of our end customers, our ultimate customers? How are we going to use it to engage our workforce? How are we going to use it to create a better quality of life for the people we serve? Because in the end, that's really what it's all about, right? What's the reason that your business exists? It's to provide a product and a service to your customers. It's to make their lives better, to make things easier for them, whoever your customer is. That's what it's about. So if you can leverage the technology in a way that drives to those outcomes, then you're much better off. But everything's moving to the lines of business. All this IT asset resource utilization that used to be kind of centralized in enterprise, right? And you did it very kind of in a silo, if you will, and you kind of kept it with maybe some minor connections to outside resources. That's changing. And you're seeing the IT assets being better aligned directly to business. That doesn't mean that you're replacing your enterprise IT department, but it means that you're looking creatively at how to leverage all the technologies that are out there to allow you to make the right decisions to lead your business forward, right? And that includes working with outside partners now in a new consumption model, where you used to buy all of your IT resources as CapEx and then maintain them through your operations and maintenance funds. You can start to look at how do you balance that a little bit better and start to work towards leveraging other assets so that you can keep up with this pace of innovation. So the number of devices. When my company was founded in 1984, there was 1,000 connected devices. You could walk around and point at each of them. They all existed. You could find them all. You knew where they were in your network, in your infrastructure. 1,000 devices, that's pretty easy to manage. Today, the number of mobile devices exceeds the number of people on the planet. And by 2020, we're going to move from 50 billion to 500 billion connected devices. That's a lot of stuff and a lot of traffic that's generated and a lot of data that's generated. So that's just the tip of the iceberg. That creates, I can't even say this number, a big, big, big number of downloads just this year. That's a lot of data traffic. So this is the application economy. We've moved into a new world where everything from the infrastructure layer down is being driven towards those business outcomes and to those applications that help the actual business of the end consumer. It's become more about the applications than it has about the underlying infrastructure. That doesn't mean the infrastructure is not tremendously important, because if the infrastructure can't support the application economy, then it's irrelevant. But you need to start thinking about that. You've got to think about what are your application payloads? What do you need to deliver to your customers and how? So I mentioned this earlier, right? A $19 trillion wave of economic opportunity. Who wants to be a part of a $19 trillion business opportunity over the next 10 years? I'm in. Anybody? Yeah? I think so. I think that's probably somewhere good to look at how you leverage the technologies to drive value within whatever your organization does, right? If you're in the public sector, there's plenty of opportunity to drive efficiencies by leveraging these technologies. It's not always just about profits, it's about economic value. So let's look at how this breaks down. The value at stake is $19 trillion. In private sector alone, there's $14.4 trillion in value at stake. This is industry-specific as well as horizontal use cases. We derive this from a set of use cases and studies that we analyzed to see what the total market value looked like. So a really interesting set of data that we collected and analyzed to get to these conclusions about the sizing of the market. But we're not going to realize this type of economic value if we don't start understanding how to leverage it today. If you look at this, in 2013, $544 billion of unrealized value just didn't happen. It just evaporated. It didn't happen because firms they just got 53% of the market opportunity. They left 47% of the opportunity on the table. Let's try to move beyond that and improve those numbers. We're going to see that change over the next few years. Because if you look at, I guess, your left-hand column, IOE has the potential to grow corporate profits by an estimated 21% by 2022. That's a pretty good growth margin, isn't it? Who wants to grow their business by 21% over the next 8 years? Anybody want to grow your business? That sounds like a reasonable target, reasonable opportunity to take advantage of. So again, John, he said that we are going to see this huge change that's going to be revolutionary. It's going to be different than everything that's happened to date in the utilization and the history of the internet. But he also said that it's going to be implemented by combining things and making value through connections. So that's kind of the bottom line. It's about the value of the connections. It's not about the value of the data. The data itself is dumb. Data is not smart. Data is a big drain on resources if you can't turn it into knowledge. What good is a bunch of data that you have to parse through? Anyone who has had trouble with their file management on their personal computer knows what I'm talking about when you waste time trying to find that document or that presentation or that whatever it is that you're looking for. How do we do better in managing our data? Turning that data into knowledge and then ultimately taking that knowledge, turning it into wisdom. So let's dissect that a little bit and talk about turning knowledge into wisdom. So knowledge, we can derive that at the edge. We can do that in real time. We can create knowledge out of information by aggregating it and analyzing it in real time, right? But to create wisdom, we have to go back and do post-analytics and historical reference, right? So that's where I talked about the fog computing connecting to the cloud computing. They're going to be so intertwined that you're going to be able to do real-time stuff at the edge, using those resources and assets at the edge, and connecting it back to the cloud so that you can do all of this advanced analytics on that data itself. And storage of information, retrieval of information, repositories, those types of things. So think about how all of that's going to unfold. So let's talk about the Internet of Things, because I said at the beginning that there's certainly a fair amount of confusion about what is the Internet of Things versus the Internet of Everything, right? So pretty simple. You know, it took me a while to come to this because, like I said earlier, I'm not as intelligent as the community I work in. But it took me a while to figure this out because the Internet of Things, Internet of Everything, you know, it just kind of sound a lot alike, right? So the Internet of Things is about machine-to-machine communications and leveraging sensors, right? And that starts to go out into operational technologies and expand the scope beyond information technology into operational technology. But where we expand into the Internet of Everything is when we take all that machine-to-machine data of things and combine it with other elements, the people, the collaboration and unified communications, the process, the analytics, the data itself, and the utilization of the data that's generated. Does that make sense? Kind of tracking with me? I'll dissect that a little bit further. So I mentioned that in the past we had information technology. And it still exists today. It's not going away. You're going to have data centers. A lot of those are going to be provided in the cloud, right? You're not going to need to manage all of those assets yourselves because it's just not a viable economic model anymore for all of your workloads. There may be specific workloads that you host in-house, but you look to leverage cloud assets where it makes sense for your business, right? So the data center is going to persist, and it's going to grow. And it's going to grow quite a bit in the cloud, and we'll talk about the cloud a little bit further. The campus, this is your headquarters offices, you know, your big environments, and then going out to your branch locations. And that was kind of the edge of IT, right? Connecting, you know, I work in the intelligence community, and just 5 years ago, I was tasked with connecting the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency via video conferencing, via email, via network connectivity to what we call the support teams at the combatant commands like PACOM here in Hawaii. So we had to figure out how do we get them the same resources and the same connectivity. Just 5 years ago, that was our challenge, to connect those branch offices back into the enterprise. But now we've moved on from that all the way out to the plant and to the field level. Now, the plant level, for anyone that's doing work with the military, you know, you can think of that as like your forward operating base, right? And the field level, you can think of that as your dismounted soldier that's actually on the battlefield, right? But in a manufacturing environment, it's a plant and it's a field location, right? You can equate these same extensions of technology out from IT into operational technologies for any market vertical. So let's talk about where this stuff is happening today. Now, we've talked about the sensors and devices. We talked about connected vehicles. We're also seeing smart cities. We're seeing things like parking meters that are intelligent and are able to tell you if there's a parking space available through an app on your phone. You're able to pay for the parking at that meter on your phone as well. You're seeing things like connected lighting. How many people know what the biggest expense for most municipalities is? Anybody know? I'll give you a hint. They're up there. Lighting. Okay? Lighting is one of the biggest expenses for municipalities. And how do you combat that? How do you deal with that? Do you need your lights on everywhere all the time? Or maybe you start to make those lights a little bit smarter and dim them. You don't have to turn them off, but you can dim an LED light, conserve some energy, and bring it back up when motion is detected, right? I'm starting to see that at grocery stores and stuff now, where they dim the aisles until someone walks down them, right? So that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about you know, smart cities, you know, bringing these meters, bringing these lighting systems, bringing them onto the IP network so we can manage them more intelligently and save a lot of money in the process, right? Same thing in your home. Same thing's happening in your home. I mentioned Nest earlier. You know, I have an IP-connected thermostat in my house, so I can adjust it from my phone or my computer before I leave the office. If there's no one there, I can turn it down when I leave, then I can turn it back up when I come home, or I can automate that process like Nest does, where it starts to understand your patterns and habits and adjust accordingly. Nest guarantees a 25% improvement in your energy utilization costs for your HVAC systems. Pretty good guarantee, 25%, right? So that's kind of where some of these markets are happening. We're seeing it in safety and security. We're seeing physical security cameras connecting to the IP network, and we're sharing those resources. I'm doing a lot of projects with the NYPD and with the FBI to leverage security cameras and to leverage that information in real time so that if you have an incident and you need all of these devices to be connected back to different intelligence entities, you can kind of see how that connection works out. I can't really go into a lot of details on that, but you can see how those connections can be really valuable in creating a better, more secure, and safer environment. So this breaks it down a little bit for you about the people, the process, the data, and the things. Now, I know this stuff is complex. It took me a lot of time to figure out what this meant and what the implications were. But there's people here that can help you. There's people here, you've got your tent cards, you're here because you want to be part of this revolution. You want to be involved in this. You want to leverage this value. So work with Hawaiian Telcom, work with us at Cisco, work with the other vendors and suppliers you have in the room that understand their piece in this puzzle and how they can help you and your business move forward in adopting these technologies to your advantage. So this slide I created to help myself make sense out of this. I call it my CIO slide, right? Because this is the slide where I explain the entire IT, OT, edge, fog, cloud, everything to a CIO, so that CIO can then explain it to business leaders that are not technical. Not everybody is technical. Not everybody understands all of this stuff. But when you break it down and say, it's really just about three things. It's about the data center. It's about the connections in the network and the intelligence in the network, and it's about the connected devices and applications. So you've got three buckets where all this stuff resides, and you can start to drill down into any of them, but you don't have to go any further in your understanding than it takes to know how to leverage it to the benefit of your business. Right? So this gives you kind of a high-level overview of where all this stuff fits and how it connects. So you see where the fog layer is. It's closer to the devices and the edge. You see the cloud and the back end and the data center, but it's the intelligence in the network that connects the devices to the data center. So you have all of those things in the value chain. So if I use a connected device to communicate, collaborate, to create data, that device is then connected through the intelligence in the network back to the data center assets that it needs to request, right? And what we're doing in a lot of the markets that I support is securing that value chain, securing the data from its origination throughout its entire life cycle. That includes when the data is manipulated, changed, we call it exploitation in the intelligence community, when we exploit the data, when we make raw data into knowledge, when it becomes proliferated and changed and transformed, we secure that data all the way from the source through every iteration of the data and back to the users, right? So security is absolutely paramount. If you're not thinking about security, then you're missing the boat here, because today, if somebody compromises my mobile device, and they listen to my phone conversation, or they hack into my data and they read my emails, how much damage does that do to me? Maybe a little bit. Maybe they get a little bit of corporate information. Maybe they find out something that they can use to their advantage and to my disadvantage. But what happens when you have all of these operational technologies connected to the IP network, and now a hacker can go in and deploy the airbag in my car when I'm driving down the H1 at 65 miles an hour? That's a life or death situation. It has to be secure. That's not an extreme example. I'm working with Boeing and with BAE Systems and companies like that to work on securing avionics systems, right? Because we don't want bad guys hacking into our operational technologies, taking them over, and changing the trajectory of an airplane, or hacking the airbag in your car. Those are just a couple of examples. Use your imagination to think of what the implications would be if people were able to compromise the data and the knowledge and the wisdom that you're creating as we expand into the Internet of Everything. So let's pivot here a little bit and look at a couple of examples of what happens when we connect the other 99%. I mentioned Nest. LED connected lights. That's the next thing I want to do in my house, is connect all my lights so that I can start realizing the energy savings costs. connected shoes, soil sensors, those types of things. So I have some examples of these technologies here. I know you folks in the back have a really good idea of what I'm holding up here, so I could actually be holding up anything and tell you that it's a soil sensor, but trust me, this is a soil sensor. It costs about $8, and it's delivered in 2 days on Amazon Prime. This device here, you connect this RFID access control, you set a code, and you use this little device here on your keychain to go in and out of your house. Not very expensive, another operational technology. These things are going to be in your homes, in your work, in your fields very, very soon. Motion sensors, distance sensors, recording modules. Now things are getting interesting. We've got voice and video coming on to that secured IoT network. Specialized devices. This is actually, it says demo on the back for you guys in the back. It says demo, demo, demo. This is a security enhanced Android device that adds another layer of security and protection so that you can process classified and sensitive data on the device itself over untrusted wireless networks. Not that the wireless network itself is naturally compromised, but you have to assume that the bad guys are trying to get to your data. Anyone ever heard of Raspberry Pi? Got a couple people in the room. Okay, so a lot of people are thinking, Raspberry Pi, that sounds good. I could go for a piece right now. But what I'm talking about is this little device right here. This is Raspberry Pi. This device is under $30. It's a full functioning computer with video, with HDMI. It's got network jack connection. It's got 2 USB ports, under $30. Hackers and gamers and people that are just really geeked out on technology are buying these things by the dozen, and they're connecting everything in their life via these little tiny devices. Pretty interesting stuff. What happens when this hits nanotechnology and becomes smaller than a coin and can be embedded in a sensor? What happens when we have sensors that are smaller than the point of a pin that can provide valuable information? And the price point comes down to where it's affordable. I'm going to skip past this one because we kind of talked about that one already. But let's talk about this, okay? Connected shoes and health bands. Anybody have this kind of stuff? Anybody have the shoe app or the little walker thing, stuff like that? We're connecting ourselves for our wellness in new and interesting ways. This is really cool, right? Because what we can do is not only track ourselves, but we can start to use what's called gamification, where we're using these games, these fun things that people do in new ways that are actually productive and beneficial. I don't know how productive and beneficial, Assassin's Creed and those types of things are, but I can see the benefit of playing games and competing with your friends on Facebook and other medium to improve your health. That's the next wave of how these connected devices for wellness are moving us forward. And I think that's really cool. I'm excited to participate in those kind of things. The soil sensors I held up earlier, right? What's the value of a soil sensor? Do you know how much water is wasted in agriculture, watering fields that don't need it? We don't want to waste anymore. We want to gain efficiencies. So a simple thing like a soil sensor that's providing you data to say, hey, it's time to irrigate. Hey, you know what? We can automate that now. It's a machine-to-machine connection, part of the Internet of Things. All of it's done at the fog computing layer, and we water our fields when they need to be watered for the specific crops that we're growing. Pretty cool, right? Pretty good in places like California where you've got a drought going on and you don't want people wasting water. Pretty good stuff. So let's talk about it from a kind of personal wellness experience. So using something like augmented reality. Anyone seen augmented reality apps on their phone? Anyone use those? Where you can see visualizations of your environment and see things like Yelp ratings for restaurants as you move your phone around. We're going to go through a little experiment with that and see how it can improve our wellness. So, my friend Sam here goes to the store and he uses the augmented reality health app that his doctor has pre-provisioned with his own medical history and experience into, it's not giving all the medical data, but it's provisioned to help to meet his medical needs and his wellness needs. So he can scan things in the grocery store. He scans an apple, it says, yeah, that's good to eat, put it in the bag. Here's more information about it, right at your fingertips. Or here's some Brussels sprouts. Those are good for you. Anyone know that? Brussels sprouts are good for you. Your phone can tell you that Brussels sprouts are good for you now, so that's really helpful, right? But what happens when Sam wants to enjoy some longboard? Okay? What do you think's going to happen here? Unfortunately for Sam, his doctor has told him longboard beer has alcohol in it, and that's not suggested with the medications that you're currently taking. Sorry, we know you are really upset with us right now. You hate us, but fortunately for me, I don't take the same medications as Sam, so I can enjoy some longboard while I'm here. So let's talk about this value. We've talked about it from a couple of different perspectives. We talked about it from the market verticals perspective, but let's talk about it from the perspective of those connections, the machine to machine to human, and the human to human connections that are being made. 7.4 trillion, the biggest bucket is in machine to machine. That's the growth market right there. That doesn't mean that the collaboration market and the machine to people market is not important. They're fairly well evenly weighted. You don't want to miss out on any of those opportunities that are created there, but really interesting to look at it and to see where the biggest growth is. Pretty close in collaboration. Collaboration is growing quite well, as we all know. We're still leveraging those technologies, but I think part of it is that the machine-to-machine stuff is just getting started. And collaboration, we've been leveraging collaboration technologies for quite some time. So all of this requires us to take on some new business models. All of this mobile computing, this change in consumption, right? We're consuming things differently. We're using cloud, we're using edge devices, we're moving away from fixed location workspaces. We're enabling what I would call work-life integration. It used to be called work-life balance. How many people feel that it's even worth trying to balance work and life anymore? It's just fully integrated, right? It's all part of the same continuum. You're always connected. You're connected to your family, you're connected to your friends, you're connected to your business, you're connected to your customers. It's integrated. Your life is fully integrated. Deal with it, right? You can't escape anymore. Even on planes, they're Wi-Fi enabling all the planes, so I can't even pass out on a plane and be left alone, right? So it's just the reality of the world that we live in, that we are perpetually connected to each other. We're becoming perpetually connected to our devices and our things. And it changes your organization dramatically. Those millennials I talked about in the beginning, they have the expectation of technology. They are a hive mentality. They have been programmed throughout their lives to be interactive with digital technology and collaborative with each other. If properly leveraged, that can provide a tremendous value to your organization. But if not, they're not going to come work for you, and you're not going to get the best and brightest. Your business needs to become hyper-aware, it needs to be predictive, and it needs to be agile. To keep up with the technology revolution that's underway, you're not going to be able to be complacent in your adoption and your utilization of technology, and you're not going to be able to stick your head in the sand and say, you know what, I'm going to sit this one out. I don't need the new technologies for my business. Those who do that will be consumed by those who understand the values of the technology. You don't want to be on the losing side of that equation. You want to leverage these technologies in a way that drives your business forward, but you don't have to understand it all. You just have to leverage it for your business. There are people that can help you to figure this stuff out and to do it in a way that provides that agility that you're looking for and that scalability. That's what all these changes in consumption models are about. That's what the cloud is about. The cloud is there to help you to manage your workloads and to dynamically shift your resources to where they're needed. Right? So keep that in mind. Cloud is not about just moving everything over and having someone else do it for you. It's much, much, much more valuable than that. And it's absolutely critical that we understand these things as we increase the amount of data, right? So you see this chart here, and you've seen kind of those waves of the internet that I exposed you to earlier, where you started out, you kind of have progressive waves in orders of magnitude, and video is where we're kind of moving through right now. But as we get into this full Internet of Things, Internet of Everything, it's another order of magnitude on top of that. These things are big. They're generating a massive amount of data. In 2013, we generated more data than the entire 5,000 years of human history before that preceded it. That includes 2011 to 2010 and all those other years in front of it. That's a massive increase and an exponential growth in the amount of data that we're creating, and it's just getting started. Some of this gets really complex too, because video is not structured data, or it's largely unstructured data. So structured data is fairly easy to categorize. You can use databases to kind of do analytics and things on it. What happens when all that data lacks the structure, right? Or it's semi-structured. It has little bits and pieces of structure, but it's not fully structured, and you have to make sense out of it. Those are all things that you should be asking, how do I do that within my organization? Talk to the people who know. So this is where we're going, right? We started with traditional IT in this web economy. We've been doing that for a while. We've gotten used to it, and as soon as you get used to something, change happens. Now you're moving into an apps economy. You're moving to this lifestyle-driven. You know, I talked about work-life integration. To me, it's a benefit, right? Because it's moved past being tethered to a workplace. You have to go in at the same time every morning and sit down at the same workstation and do the same stuff for the entire day, week after week, month after month, year after year. We've got a lot more flexibility in how we manage our work and how we consume and use IT resources. We've moved into this hybrid cloud service model, right? We've moved into an environment where we have the ability to take the existing on-premise resources. You don't want to throw everything out, do you? If you've got investments in technology and you want to leverage those investments, by all means do it until the life cycle demands that you either refresh it or replace it by moving those payloads and those workloads somewhere else, right? Leverage it. Create the hybrid cloud environment. We'll talk about that a little bit more. So we've got the supply side. You've got your cloud providers. Hawaiian Telcom provides you with the services that you need on the supply side for your cloud resources. Then you've got all of these other models. You've got the demands on your business. You look at your business and figure out, what am I going to do with this stuff? What do I need to do? What does my organization need to be successful? And then you start to build a hybrid cloud strategy around that. Which payloads am I going to keep in-house in my IT department? Which things am I going to move out to the edge, to the lines of business? Which things am I going to use a provider for going forward? So we're seeing this everything as a service model evolving, right, on the cloud side. So you're going to see more and more and more and more of your business needs met through services. Pretty good from a consumption model. It's predictable, it reduces risk, it aggregates resources and expertise. There's a lot of value to working with these providers, but you have to understand, what is it in your IT environment that you're trying to do? Are you trying to have shared service? Are you trying to enable a mobile workforce? Are you trying to engage with your customers in new and different ways? Are you trying to leverage personally owned devices? You need to look at all of that and how you source and how you create flexibility within your organizations, and then how you leverage those cloud resources to make that real. Cloud is inherently flexible and scalable. If you take away nothing else from all of this, aside from some of the Internet of Everything, things are coming kind of message, take away that cloud is flexible and scalable. It's something that can grow with you and grow with your business as your business is transformed. But one size does not fit all. You have a unique business. That's why you're successful, because you have unique differentiators that set you apart from your competition, that make you successful in whatever it is you do, right? You have a unique environment. If you're public sector, you have a unique set of mission obligations to your stakeholders, whether they're your constituents, whether they're your support team, whether they're your suppliers, whatever that may be. So I've mentioned this term workload mobility quite a few times. Think about that. Think about where your workloads need to be to drive your business. That's really all it comes down to. You have private clouds, you have public clouds, you have value-added clouds, you have all these different things, these different services that can be offered to you. Talk to the people who know. Figure out with your business folks what is going to be of value to them. Look at your existing investments and figure out your way forward. Look at it from an architectural standpoint. Look holistically across your business. Look at the business drivers, where you are, where you're going, and where you ultimately want to be in the future is going to drive those decisions and those architectures. Ask yourself if you're ready. Is your organization ready? Are you ready? Is your network ready? If not, Hawaiian Telcom can give you more bandwidth. Is your data center ready? If not, start to leverage cloud resources to expand dynamically and to be flexible and scalable as your business needs grow. Do you have the right expertise within your organization? If not, find the people who do and work with them to understand what it is that you need to do to get to the next level. Have you thought about security? Is security part of everything you do? Because if it isn't, you need to start thinking about that, because if your data isn't secure, then your knowledge isn't secure and your wisdom isn't secure, and your unique differentiators are eroded. So just a few takeaways. 99% still not connected. That leaves a lot of value on the table. The Internet of Everything is connecting all of this stuff together to create this new value for everyone in the entire value chain. Private sector, public sector, service providers, end customers, consumers, citizens, everyone is part of this. This revolution is taking us all in, and it's all going to grow exponentially over the next several years, over the next 10 years. We're not going to recognize the world as it was, and we're not going to be able to live without the Internet of Things any better than a 14-year-old can live without a phone. We're connecting everything to IP networks. All of these old sensor technologies that used to be on proprietary networks, all of that's gone. Machine to machine, machine to human, and human to human communications are all coming together to create a new order of magnitude of value for your companies and for your organizations. We're creating data, but that data needs to be transformed into knowledge and wisdom. And the intelligence to connect all of these devices to the cloud, to the fog, to each other is absolutely critical. You need to ask yourself if you're ready. If you're not, start a plan today to get to where you need to be to drive your business forward. So I know a lot of folks in the room are thinking, okay, great, this is Cyberdyne, and we're going to have Skynet built here soon, and the machines are going to take over, and then what happens to humanity, right? I want to address the elephant in the room here, say, humans will still be in control for now. But what you need to think about here is, how do you leverage these technologies? How do you control them to your benefit and not the other way around? Technology for technology's sake is useless. Technology cannot be in control. Humans must remain in control. So with that, I'm going to give you a little bit of an uplifting video, and we'll conclude. Wasn't that long ago, was it? Not talking about George Orwell. Years ago, supercomputers. Cray, smarter. Nanotechnology intersecting with sensors and the Internet of Things. Connected to the cloud. A tree with 4,000 Twitter followers. I'll bet it's a lot bigger than that now. Who else is going to follow a tree when they leave today? Data is being generated everywhere. How are we going to transform that data and use it to our advantage? Think back 20 years. I'm thinking back to my Commodore 64, writing command line code. Things are changing. And it's just getting started. Thank you all. I appreciate it.